What if I told you that the greatest illusion in your life isn't magic, media, or marketing, but the one your own mind creates every single day? You wake up, open your eyes, and immediately your brain begins to name, categorize, and judge everything you see. That's my room. That's the ceiling. I'm late. It happens so fast, so automatically, that you don't even notice it. But here's the dangerous part. You believe it all without question. Alan Watts once said, "The menu is not the meal." And yet, we live as if the words we use to describe life are life itself. We fall into a trance, a dream, a thought-generated movie that plays in our heads and convinces us it's the truth. But is it? Let's slow down for a moment. Imagine that you were born without language. No names, no definitions, no cultural conditioning. Would a tree still be a tree? Would a cloud still be a cloud? Or would everything simply be without division, without separation, without labeling? Watts warned us that the mind is not just a mirror, it's a projector. It doesn't just reflect what's out there, it creates what we think is out there. And once that movie starts playing, we're hooked. We believe we are the main character. We think we are separate from the world we observe, that there is me on one side and everything else on the other. And this, he said, is the most dangerous illusion of all, because when we believe we are separate, we suffer. We feel isolated. We fear loss. We compete. We compare. We chase after purpose like a dog chasing its own tail, thinking fulfillment is always somewhere out there, never within. But let's pause. Right now, not tomorrow. Not next week, in this exact moment. Look around you, feel your breath. Watch the thoughts floating through your mind like clouds across the sky, and then ask, who is watching those thoughts? You see, the illusion isn't the world. It's the idea that you are apart from it. Alan Watts often spoke of the idea that we don't come into this world. We come out of it, like waves from the ocean, like fruit from a tree. You are not a stranger here. You are not a tourist in life. You are life. And yet, the illusion says otherwise. It whispers, you are alone. You must become more. You must fix yourself. You must figure it all out. And so we chase endlessly, exhausting ourselves in the process. But what if the chase itself was the illusion? What if you don't need to become anything more than you already are? What if awakening isn't about adding, but removing the illusion that something is missing? In this video, we're going to explore the subtle, often invisible ways the mind traps us in falsehoods, not to shame the mind, but to understand its nature, to see clearly, to wake up, because once the illusion is seen for what it is, it begins to lose its power. You'll never look at your thoughts or your identity the same way again. Before we move on, I'd love to hear from you. Just take a moment and drop a quick comment below. It helps anchor what you've just heard into your awareness. Reflect and answer. The illusion I've been living in is the birth of the illusion. I versus the world. From the moment you were a child, you were taught to say your name. You were taught where your body ends and where the world begins. You were taught that you are in here and everything else is out there. This separation is the very foundation of your identity. But Alan Watts would challenge this by asking, is that really true? He reminded us that separation is not a fact. It's a mental habit, a framework created by language. Because if we look at it honestly, where do you truly end and the world begin? Is it at your skin? Is it at your breath? Is it your thoughts? The line is blurrier than we think. Let's go deeper. The mind, in its attempt to simplify the vast mystery of life, draws imaginary lines between me and you, right and wrong, inside and outside. But these are just concepts. Helpful, yes, but real? Not quite. Consider this. You look at a tree and immediately label it tree. But before that word, before the concept, what was it? Just form, just life, just being. Watts said that once we give something a name, we stop seeing it. We stop experiencing it in its raw, vibrant, living reality. The name becomes a shortcut, and with enough shortcuts, we end up living entirely inside a mental map of the world, instead of the world itself. And the most dangerous label of all, I, the ego, the sense of a separate self, is not something we are born with. It's something we construct. Piece by piece, we gather roles, identities, preferences, fears, and stories until we believe we are this character in a storybook called My Life. But here's the twist. The character is not the author. We often believe we're in control, that we're steering the ship of our lives. Yet when we sit quietly, when we observe our thoughts as they arise, we realize something shocking. We are not the ones thinking them. Thoughts appear, emotions arise, reactions occur, and then we, after the fact, say, I thought that, I felt that, I chose that. But who is I? This illusion of a permanent fixed self leads to endless suffering, because if you believe you are just this body, just this mind, then you must defend it. You must protect it. You must prove it's worthy, successful, safe. You become trapped in survival mode, fighting for your little piece of existence in a world that feels cold and separate. Alan Watts often used the metaphor of the wave and the ocean. The wave believes it is an individual. It rises, it crests, it falls, and it disappears. But the wave is never separate from the ocean. In fact, it is the ocean in temporary form. Just as you are not a stranger in this universe, you are the universe in temporary form. But here's what the illusion does. It tells the wave, you must compete with other waves. You must be taller, stronger, more impressive. And so instead of flowing with life, we resist it. We try to control it. We forget that we were never separate in the first place. The ego, then, is not a villain. It's just a tool meant to help us navigate the world. The problem begins when we forget it's a tool and begin to think it's who we are. Once we believe that, we begin to suffer because we are now living as a fragment, not the whole. And fragments always fear they are missing something. But what if nothing is missing? What if the separation was never real to begin with? Watts encouraged us not to destroy the ego, but to see through it, to recognize it as a mask. A useful mask, but not the face beneath. When we see through the illusion, we begin to live with greater ease. We stop taking everything so personally. We begin to flow again. We begin to be again. And the greatest irony, the moment you stop clinging to the idea of me, life becomes more intimate, more vibrant, more connected than ever before. You realize that you don't need to become something. You already are everything. The consequences. Living in a fragmented world. Once you accept the illusion that you are separate from the world, everything begins to fracture. It starts subtly. You begin to feel like a stranger in your own life, like you're always reaching for something you can't quite name. You chase after success, love, status, security, believing that one day, when you get there, you'll finally feel whole. But there never comes, because the separation your mind created cannot be fixed by anything outside of you. Alan Watts described this condition as being caught in a trap of your own making, a psychological prison where you believe you're a noun, a solid object, rather than a verb, a process, a dance of the universe in motion, and because of that belief, you live your life trying to complete yourself with things that were never missing. This illusion of the separate self doesn't just create discomfort. It creates suffering, deep, chronic soul-level suffering. It creates comparison, the belief that you are not enough as you are. So you look around and measure yourself against others, their careers, their bodies, their relationships. You forget that you are comparing one wave to another, forgetting both came from the same ocean. It creates conflict. If I am me and you are other, then I must protect myself from you. We split into sides, tribes, classes, belief systems, and nationalities. We forget the deeper truth, that we're all playing different roles in the same unfolding play. And we suffer not just from the battles in the world, but the battles in our own minds. It creates fear. If you think you're separate, then life feels like a hostile environment. You cling to what you have. You dread losing it. You worry about what's next. You walk through life armored, braced, never quite at ease. And worst of all, it creates loneliness, a loneliness that no crowd, no relationship, no accomplishment can fix. Because as long as you believe you are isolated, even in a room full of people, you will feel alone. But Watts told us that this loneliness is based on a lie. He said, you are the universe experiencing itself, that underneath the illusion of separateness, there is only connection, only wholeness. Still, the mind resists this truth because the ego thrives on identity, on defining, on controlling. It says, no, I am separate. Look at me. I have thoughts that no one else hears. I have pain that no one else feels. I must be a separate self. But let's take a closer look. Are your thoughts really yours? Did you choose them? Or do they simply arise? Are your emotions separate from the world? Or are they responses to everything you see, hear, touch, remember, and imagine? Watts asked us to notice how the body breathes by itself, the heart beats by itself, the planet spins by itself, and yet we claim ownership over these things as if we are the controller, the operator, the master behind the curtain. But there is no one behind the curtain. There is only life unfolding. One continuous process, one great happening. When you realize this, not as a theory, but as a living truth, you begin to soften, you begin to trust, you begin to relax into the mystery. You stop trying to conquer the world and start becoming part of it again. Instead of anxiety, you feel curiosity. Instead of pressure, you feel presence. Instead of isolation, you feel immersion. You return to what you've always been, a wave in the ocean of being. Never separate, never alone, never lacking. This is not a belief to memorize. It's not something to repeat like a mantra. It's something to feel, to sense, to remember in the quiet spaces of your day, when you're walking, breathing, listening. It's in those still moments that the illusion starts to crack, and when it does, even just a little, you begin to see the world differently, more alive, more open, more you, because now, you're no longer watching life from the outside. You're back inside it, where you've always belonged. Awakening. Dissolving the illusion. 700 words. Now that we've explored the illusion, the idea that you are a separate, isolated self, it's time to look at what happens when you begin to see through it. Awakening is not an event. It's not a spiritual achievement or a grand revelation that turns your life into a story of perfection. Rather, awakening is simply noticing the illusion, noticing how your mind labels, judges, separates, noticing how easily you believe everything your thoughts say, and then not believing them so automatically anymore. Alan Watts often reminded us, the reason you want to be better is the reason why you aren't. He wasn't saying self-improvement is wrong. He was pointing out that when the ego seeks awakening, it does so from the very illusion it hopes to escape. It turns spirituality into another goal, another possession, another "I did it" to add to the shelf. But what if there's nothing to do to awaken? What if awakening is not about adding anything to yourself, but simply removing what was never true to begin with? The illusion dissolves the moment you stop identifying with it. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. You are not your emotions. You are the field in which they rise and fall. You are not your name, your job, your history, or your plans. You are the witness, the space, the silent observer, and you always have been. But here's the challenge. We are addicted to identification. The ego doesn't want to die, so it resists the truth. It distracts you. It argues. It says, but I have to protect myself. I have to get somewhere. I have to become something. The moment you listen, the illusion pulls you back in. So how do we begin to let go? The first step is awareness, noticing the story, watching the thoughts, becoming curious instead of reactive. Try this. The next time a negative thought arises, instead of believing it, ask, who is having this thought? Let it float by like a cloud. Let it pass without grabbing onto it. This is the beginning of freedom. Watts often used the metaphor of a dance. He said that life is not a journey with a destination, but a musical thing, and you were never meant to arrive anywhere. You were meant to dance, but the illusion tells you to race to the end, to arrive, to win, and in doing so, you miss the music. To dissolve the illusion is to return to the dance. It's to laugh when your mind tries to take things too seriously. It's to cry without shame, because emotions are not weakness. They're waves of energy that pass through. It's to walk without needing a destination, to speak without needing to prove anything, to love without needing control. This is not passivity, it's aliveness. When the illusion drops, even for a moment, you begin to live differently. You stop searching for something out there to complete you because you feel the completeness of being itself. You don't just understand it, you experience it. And this experience doesn't have to be mystical. It can happen while sipping tea, while walking barefoot, while staring at the sky. Suddenly, the boundaries blur, the walls fall away, and for a moment, you remember what it felt like before the world told you who you were supposed to be. You feel free. That's awakening. Not fireworks, not angels descending, just the quiet, revolutionary truth that you are not what you thought you were. Alan Watts said, trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth. You don't need to define yourself. You don't need to fix yourself. You only need to see what you are not, and what you've always been will reveal itself on its own. You are not a separate entity in a hostile world. You are the world. You are the now. You are the unfolding mystery of life, taking form for a brief moment as you. And when you know this, not as a belief, but as a living truth, nothing will ever be quite the same again. Integration, living beyond the illusion. So, now what? You've heard the words. You've seen the illusion. You've glimpsed, perhaps for the first time, the possibility that you are not merely a separate mind wandering through a hostile universe, but something much greater, much quieter, and far more intimate. But how do you live from this place? How do you integrate this awareness into daily life, when the world still demands identity, structure, plans, and roles? Alan Watts would say, don't try so hard. He would remind us that enlightenment is not a chore. It's not something you need to remember every second. Integration is not a perfect spiritual performance. It's about relaxing into being, about learning to live lightly, playfully, and honestly with what is. You don't need to change the world. You only need to stop believing the illusion that you're separate from it. And that shift changes everything. You begin to move through life without the constant noise in your head. The need to prove, defend, or control begins to soften. You're no longer trying to win arguments, win love, win success. You're simply being. It doesn't mean you stop acting or creating. On the contrary, you might find yourself more inspired than ever. But now, the action flows from connection, not fear. From joy, not pressure. From alignment, not striving. You begin to listen more to people, to your body, to silence. You become curious about others because you see yourself in them. The idea of me versus them begins to dissolve, replaced by something much more powerful, shared humanity. You no longer rush through the moment to get to the next. You're not climbing toward some imaginary peak where happiness finally lives. You're content with the view right here. Even the mundane becomes sacred. Washing dishes, walking to the store, making your bed, all moments pulsing with presence. And something surprising happens. You start to laugh more. Not because everything is perfect, but because you see how absurdly serious we take this dream. The mind wants control, certainty, and labels, but now you see the joke. And in that laughter, you become free. Watts once said, the more a thing tends to be permanent, the more it tends to be lifeless. So we stop clinging to permanence. We stop pretending anything lasts forever. We let people change. We let ourselves change, and in doing so, we make room for love. You realize that love is not attachment, it's not clinging, it's not possession. Love is seeing clearly, without distortion. Love is letting someone be free, and knowing you're free too. You start speaking from a deeper place, not to manipulate or impress, but to share, to express, to connect. And perhaps most importantly, you learn to trust. Trust that life knows what it's doing. Trust that you don't have to figure it all out. Trust that you are already what you've been searching for. This trust is not blind. It's grounded. It grows not from faith in something external, but from the direct experience of your own nature. You begin to sense that you are not here by accident. You are not random. You are a necessary expression of the totality. The universe is not outside of you. It is through you, as you, in you. And so, when pain comes, you don't panic. When joy comes, you don't grasp. You begin to live in rhythm with life, not against it. Alan Watts didn't teach formulas. He didn't offer rigid paths. He offered openings, invitations, mirrors, and through those mirrors, we could see beyond the surface, into the mystery, into the truth. So, take this awareness and walk back into your life, not to escape it, but to see it freshly. Let presence infuse your day. Let silence speak through your choices. Let laughter meet your fear. You are not here to become something else. You are here to remember what you already are, not a separate self, but the dance of life itself, moving, changing, breathing, being. Now take a breath and feel it. The illusion doesn't need to be destroyed. It only needs to be seen, and once seen, it loses its grip. And you return to the world not as a stranger, but as life, looking through open eyes, finally home. Thank you for taking this journey. If something inside you shifted, even slightly, leave a comment below and let it echo. I'm not separate. I am life.